Okay, new sugya shtickle. We're in the sugya of Bikurim. We mentioned a lot about Bikurim. I told you, please open up the Rambam. It's very easy. Just read through it. It'll give you a geschmack as anything. It's a close sugya. Anyway, Amar Rabba the bottom line on Yud Ches Amid Beis. Amar Rava Bar Ada Amar Yitzchak Bikurim Me'ei Masai Mechayv Aleim, says the Heilige Rashi at the top of the page. Misa Zor Ha'oichlan. We know that Bikurim is called Trumas Yotcha, as then a Truma as then a Misa B'dei Shemayim. At which point in time, when the person goes ahead, brings up the Zayiminim, at which point in time does it get the Shem Bikurim that a Zor will be Chayev what? Misa on it. And for the Gemara Mishiyoru Pnei Habayis, when it sees the Pnei Habayis again, doesn't mean the Azara, according to Rashi, according to the Rambam that you looked up in Perek Gimel Halach Aleph, it means what? When it sees Yerushalayim, when it sees Pnei Chlema. Kiman, like who? Ki Tana, like the following Tana. The Tanya, Rebbe Eliezer Omer, Bikurim Miktsason Bechutz uMiktsason Befnim. Bikurim is bought in a tenner, right? You guys you're going to put the tenner, the basket in front of the kohen, and you're going to read, before Sukkot, you're going to read the whole parsha of Rami Rabbi. And let's say half of it is inside the wall, and half of it, or according to Rashi, Azara, and half of it is outside. Harehein kechulin, they are like chulin l'chol devrayim. Shebachutz, the one that is outside, harihu kechulin devrayim. And the chiddush is, fellas, that what? We don't say the 10 of the basket goes ahead and unifies it all as considered as being inside. In other words, we could have a svara that the basket is mitzaref, the whole thing, that if whatever inside is considered inside, and whatever's outside is also considered inside. Kamashmal on that, no. But what do you see from here? You see the stuff that was inside, was considered what? Considered inside, and therefore this is the man the Amma who says Kisharab Pnei Habayis. The next sugya is interesting. There's a big shaila of kedusha Eretz Yisrael. The kedusha was kitcha the shaita, the kitcha the lavai, or no, or not. Within that shaila, even if you hold kedusha rishoyna kitcha the shaita, the kitcha the lavai, that may be only vis-a-vis Eretz Yisrael, not vis-a-vis Yerushalayim. In other words, there's no Beis HaMikdash, but if in Yerushalayim, are you in the Makom HaMikdash would be considered L'fnei Hashem. Nafkamina would be, could you eat Maisa Sheni there Bisman Hazeh? We know Maisa Sheni has to be eaten L'fnei Hashem. Maisa Sheni has to be L'fnei Hashem. If Bisman Hazeh, what's the halacha? Could you go up to Eretz Yisrael? I mean, if the grain grows in Eretz Yisrael, and go to the Beis HaMikdash, that area. Either you don't need it for Ma'aser Sheni, it's Yerushalayim. Excuse me. I jumped the gun. That's the Inyan Bechar. The Inyan Ma'aser Sheni, all you need to be is Yerushalayim. Does it have the kedusha? Could be considered l'fnei Hashem b'zman hazeh that you will be able to go ahead and eat it. That is the Gemara Shaila. Okay, says the Gemara. Amrav Sheshes Bikurim hanacha ma'akeves behen. Right? Kriya ema keves behen. Now, the Bikurim, Hanacha is ma'akiv. The act of putting it down is ma'akiv from Bikurim. And Kriya ema ma'akiv behen. And Kriya not. Kiman. Now, this is a little shverlich. What? Ki haitana. And now, Rav Sheshes goes on, and he brings a difficult brisa to find the mind of Amma who says that Hanacha is ma'akiv and Kriya is not ma'akiv. We had the Shita fellas, the Machachamim who argued on Rav Shimon Rebbe, and Rebbe Akiva held Kriyas Ma'akiv. The Chacham disagreed. There's a Pnei Yeshua over here. I didn't go through it, honestly. I just saw they zeichened it, and he has a cheshbon why Rav Sheshes is saying it his own memra. But in other words, it bears the kasha. We went through the sugi. We know there's such a man Amma. What's Rav Sheshes being mechadish over here? Keman Kuhu. We saw it as a bar plukta. But see, says the Gemara, the Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer. Shloisha devarim mishum shloisha zakenim. Rabbi Yossi said 3 things in the name of 3 zakenim, and we only need one of them. And the one we need will show that Kriya is not ma'akiv and Hanacha is ma'akiv. In other words, we're going to have a long-winded brisa. At the end of the brisa, we're going to know one thing, that Kriya is not ma'akiv, okay? So bear with me. Rabbi Shmuel Lami, Yachal Yala Adam Maisa Sheni Bisman Hazeh B'Yushalayim V'Yachlenu. I might think a person is able to go ahead go up to Yerushalayim Bisman Hazeh and eat his Maisa Sheni. Says Rashi, 2 lines from the top. Yachol Yala Adam, Kesavar, Kedusha Sa'aretz, Loi Batla. The Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is not Batal, and therefore, Vitzarech Lahafish Maisris. You have to separate Maisa. The Ka'amar, Yachol, I might think, Ya'alenu v'yachlenu v'Yushalayim, you separate the Maisa Sheni, you could bring it up to Yushalayim, Beloi Pidyon, without being poid it, and eat it there, right? Now, the Gemara names on, guys, that Eretz Yisrael is Kaddish, Kitchel Shaita, Kitchel Asalavoi. So obviously, if the Gemara is clearing the Shaila and saying you can't do it, it must be that that we have to separate Yerushalayim from the rest of the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, just because, don't say a carte statement. I could hold Kitchel Shaita, Kitchel Asalavoi is speaking about what? Eretz Yisrael, and not Yerushalayim. Or else, what's your shaila over here? If it's one general kedusha and you're telling me that's kedusha in your ma'isa, so Yerushalayim has kedusha in Yerushalayim, and you should be able to do it. But the Gemara says you can't. So you see over here, the Gemara is splitting hairs. We're splitting the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael from Yerushalayim proper, from Yerushalayim proper. Okay, so Yachol Yadam Ma'aser Sheni Bisman Hazeh Yerushalayim Yachlenu V'Dinhu that you can't, guys. The dinhu that you can't. Bechor toyin habos makom. If the bechor is not a balmum, if the bechor is tamim, it's as a din of a carbon. What do? You need makom. You have to go ahead and bring it up to the base of mikdash and eat it. U'ma'aser sheni to'ah habos makom. Ma'aser sheni also. Ma bechor ein ela b'fnei abayis. Bechor is only when the base of mikdash is standing. Af ma'aser ein ela b'fnei abayis. Okay, so we're going to learn out Maisa from Bechor. Just like Bechor needs to go be in Lifnei Abayis, and Bisman Hazeh we don't do it, so too Maisa, which needs Lifnei Abayis, Bisman Hazeh we won't do it. So the limus in Bechor. Guys, the Gemara is going to ask, why don't we have the same Shaila by Bechor? Why don't we have, in other words, you take for granted for sure that Bechor, you can't eat Bisman Hazeh. And fellas, I'll tell you a Chiddush Nifla. So you're saying to yourself, of course you can't eat a bechor. You need a mizbeach and you spritz the dam, right? What I have, it's Tisha B'Av. You spritz the dam, you took care of everything, and now you have the basa. And there's no base of Mikdash. That's what we're talking about. You took care of the technical aspects over here. Okay, we're going to see Be'ez Hashem. Okay, so says the Gemara. So just like we're learning out now from Bechor, from Maisa from Bechor, just like Bechor needs bias, Bismana says no. So to Maisa, Bismana says no. Now you'll ask, how can I learn out Maisa from Bechor? Mal Bechor shekain toyin matin domin ve'imurim legabe mizbeach. In other words, we're not talking about in Mitzias what was done. In other words, you're going to say Bismana says, you're going to say the way I set up the scenario already was done. It doesn't mean that. It means in the genre Bechor has this chumrah. You know why Bisman Hazeh you can't do it? Because it needs one zrika, and it needs what? The hakrabas emurim that goes to Hashem. So masha'en kein ma'isa. So maybe ma'isa fellas you could eat. Says the Gemara bikurim yochiach that what? That you can't eat bikurim Bisman Hazeh, and it doesn't need what? It doesn't need matan domim, and it doesn't need murim, and you still can't eat. So therefore, that's not the chumrah of can't eating. And memela, Maisa also you can't eat. You'll ask Maila bikurim shekain to unim hanacha. That's why you can eat. Mashen came Maisa not. So right now, what are we holding, fellas? We're holding that Maisa dish you should be able to eat Bisman Hazeh. I can't learn out from Bechor because Bechor has the chumrah of Mat and Domim, Mat and Imurim. I can't learn out from Bikurim because Bikurim Mat has Hanacha. Memela, Bechor Maisa, which has neither, maybe Bisman Hazeh, you could go ahead and eat. Maybe it's right. You could go ahead and eat. Talmud Loimar, therefore the pasuk says, and I'm going to quote the pasuk in a second. It says the Vorim Tezayin in some of the Gemaras. That's not the correct thing. It's the Vorim Yud Gimel Chaf. It's the Vorim Yud Dalit Chaf Gimel. It's the Vorim Yud Dalit Chaf Gimel. So here's what the pasuk says. Binasata. Actually, it's Yudal Chavav. V'nasata kesef b'chol asher tavis nafshecha yimayis sheni. You're going to spend the money whatever you want. Babako, batzoyin, bayayin, b'sheicha, u'b'chol asher tisholcha nafshecha. V'yachalta sham l'fnei Hashem elokecha. You'll eat it there in front of Hashem. V'samachta ato v'secha. So what do we say? V'yachalta sham l'fnei Hashem elokecha. You'll eat it in front of Hashem. You'll eat it there in front of Hashem. And in the same pasuk, it says what? Makish Maisa lebechar. Let me see if I'm not sure. Let's change the pasuk. They quote one pasuk. I'm giving you another pasuk. Okay, listen to this pasuk, fellas. This is your Dalid Chav Gimel. V'yachalta l'fnei Hashem lokecha b'makam asher yivchar. You'll eat it there l'fnei Hashem that Hashem chose to go ahead l'shakich shmo sham. Ma'isa degancha, guys, that's good. Tiroishcha v'yitzarecha u'bechayros b'korcha v'tzaynecha. So in the same pasuk where it says Ma'isa, it says bechar. Good. Again. V'yachalta l'fnei Hashem elokecha b'makam asher yivchar l'shakich shmo sham. Ma'isa degancha tiroishcha v'yitzarecha u'bechayros b'charcha. So it says Ma'isa and it says bechar. So we have what's called the hekesh, right? We have the hekesh. Now, what's the hekesh? Makish Ma'isa lebechar. Ma bechar eina el l'fnei abayis. Just like what? Bechar is only l'fnei abayis. Af Ma'isa ein l'fnei abayis. So too what? Ma'isa is ein l'fnei abayis. Okay, so what? In other words, initially, fellas, just the mechanics over here. Initially, we wanted to go ahead and learn from a Mehmet Sinu, just like Bechar needs bias, and Bismana says no, so to Maisa, which needs bias, Bismana says no. A Mehmet Sinu, you have a kasha, that destroys Mehmet Sinu. We had a kasha, a Bechar needs Matan Damim, and needs a Murim. You went ahead, you compared to Bikurim. Bikurim also, Bismana said not, with a bias. That needs Hanacha. So what does the Gemara do now? The Gemara brings a hekesh from a pasuk bechar to Ma'isa de bechar. Don't you have the same kasha? And the answer is, ein meishivan ala hekesh. A hekesh, there's no kasha on a hekesh. I elevated the limud from Memetzina to hekesh. Once I elevated it, there's going to sered. There's nothing to talk about. It's what? It's a hekesh. Once it's a hekesh, no kasha. So right now, what are we holding? We're holding that bechor Ma'isa bizman hazeh, Ma'isa sheni, you cannot bring to Yerushalayim and eat. Now, at this point in time, you're totally lost of the whole purpose of bringing this Ma'isa, because you're so focused on what? On the limud. We're bringing this in to show Hanach is ma'akiv and Kriya is not. We're bringing this in to, again, we want to bring in Amanda Amar. Rav Papa wanted, Rav Sheshes wanted to bring in Amanda Amar, who says that what? That Hanach is ma'akiv, and what? And Rav Sheshes wants to bring that Hanach is ma'akiv. No. So now, V'im Isa, and if you're telling me that Kriya is ma'akiv, that right as well, Lifroch Mali Bikurim Shekain Te'una Kriya V'hanacha. Fellas, in other words, you hear this? Look at me. This is your classic. You brought in a whole limud, which you don't need. You only need one line. When you slugged up Bikurim, when you wanted to say that Maisa is not like Bikurim, what did you say? Bikurim needs Hanacha. If Kriya is Ma'akiv, you should have said Kriya V'hanacha. The fact that you left out the word Kriya shows that what? This is the Madiyama in his limud only needs Hanacha. Again, it's a shver limud, and you needed it for that one line. What do we need it for? In the slug up, to say you can't learn Maisa from Bikurim, the Chumrah of Bikurim, it needs Hanacha, but you didn't say it needs Kriya. So the fact that you didn't say it shows that this Mandi Amma holds that what? That you need Hanacha and you don't need Kriya. That's the Raya that's Rav Sheshes brought from this Zaken. V'im Isa, and if it's true that Kriya is Ma'akiv, Lifruch, Mali Bikurim Shekain Tuna Kriya V'hanacha, right? And this is what? This is Rav Sheshes' proof. Rav Ashi, I don't like your proof. Nihidi kuvaleka. Good, it's not ma'akiv that it has a shem bikurim, but mitzvah mileka, v'lema mitzvah lefroich. Guys, is there a mitzvah to read from Atzeres to Chag? Absolutely. No one disagrees with that. Good. If you want to ask a Memetzinu, right? If you want to ask a Memetzinu, then you simply could have said what? Okay, you know what? There's no kriya associated with Maisa. Mashenkin Bikurim, there is a mitzvah associated with it. So that you left it out is not a raya, it's not a big chiddush, right? Again, if you needed it, you should have gone ahead what? And said mitzvah. You should have lifbach mitzvah. Okay? So there must be a different reason you left it out. Again, your whole limud is predicated upon the fact that you left it out. In fact, you could have inserted it and it's a mitzvah. So it must be, guys, that you left it out is not because necessarily that it's the ma'akiv. You left it out for a different reason. It could be it is ma'akiv, but yet you left it out. In other words, the reason why it could be you need a kriya and hanacha. So why do you leave out kriya? For the following reason, okay? It could, now that's Rav Ashi slugging up the raya. He's not disagreeing. He's saying you can't bring me a raya from here that this man the Amma holds kriya is not ma'akiv. Why? Because Elo Amar Rav Ashi kivan the ikka bikurei hager. Since there's the bikurim of a ger, the boy lemeima asher nishba Hashem la'avayseinu v'leimatzi Amar like psikale. In other words, what were you going to say? Madoch bikurim needs kriya, toima b'maisa that doesn't. 1 second. It doesn't always need kriya. If a ger brings bikurim, he can't say the parsha Ramad Avi because he can't say the land shenish b'lavesenu because it wasn't his father yet, right? Or even afterwards, he's a ger. So Memela, the reason you left it out is not because that there's no mitzvah of kriya. The reason you left it out is because you don't always have to say it. That's so raya is not no raya. Okay, that's all he did. Rav Ashi slugged up the raya. Okay, now what did we do? So that is the sugya of Rav Sheshes trying to bring a raya. Now the sugya within the sugya was the dialogue that took place. Ma'aser Sheni Bizman Hazeh, which was again our sugya is where the hanach is only hanach and not kriya. But you along the way you just introducing a sugya. Can you eat Ma'aser Sheni Bizman Hazeh in Yerushalayim? What did you do? You tried to learn it from a Memetzinu. From first you tried what? Bechar, and then you tried Bikurim. Being unsuccessful, we bought a plastic for a hekesh. The Gemara is now asking, why did I leave the Memetzinu or jump to the hekesh? I couldn't learn out Maisa from Bechar alone. I couldn't learn Maisa from Bikurim alone. But maybe the two of them, I could learn it out, the Mehat Sad, and there's no reason to jump to the hekesh. Okay, what are you going to say, fellas? Let's go. Let's start. The Gemara doesn't speak it out. I'm making it up now. I'm making it up as we go along. Bechar came out from Bechar because it needs matan damim. Bikurim yachiach. You kill out from Bikurim needs hanacha. Bechar yachiach. Each one is machiach the other. That's not the reason. Hatzara shava shebehem that they need lifnei abayis and they and Yerushalayim. I'll go ahead and bring in Maisa that also. So forget the hekesh from a tzara shava of Bechar and Bikurim. I can learn that Maisa that you can't do as Bizman Hazeh. Why did you have to jump to the hekesh? What pircha could you have asked on that limud of the tzara shava that I couldn't learn it out that I had to jump to the hekesh to say you can't? Good. In other words, clearly one doesn't work. But one Maisa from two should work. And why bring the hekesh? As I read the Gemara. V'teisei b'mehat sad. Learn that from mehat sad between Bechar and Maisa, and Bikurim. I'll tell you why. Mishum the ikal and mifrich, there's a kasha. Malat sad hashava shebehen Bechar and Bikurim, sheyesh behem sad mizbeach. They both have it sad mizbeach. The Bechar to put the blood and burn the emurim, and Bikurim the hanacha. Mashen came Maisa, which doesn't have a tzad mizbeach. So therefore, maybe Maisa, you could go ahead and eat. Therefore, you had to come onto the pasuk and the hekesh, and you wouldn't learn out of the tzad. So again, in the logic of Gemara, you began with one purpose. You brought in a whole separate thing. We said the separate thing is no raya, and then we went back to discuss the separate thing. Okay, so right now we're holding good. Now, getting back to the sugya, fellas, of what? Of shaita kitcher lasalava or not. So again, for those who came late, we began with the premise that Maisa Bismana says the Raisa. Why? Because Eretz Yisrael was kitcher l'shaita v'kitcher lasalava. It wasn't bottled. In other words, it was not the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael wasn't bottled. What about the kedusha of Yerushalayim? Was it bottled or not? The nafkamina would be whether you can bring Maisa. That was only nafkamina. The Gemara named on as the Dava Pashit, fellas, that you can't bring Bechar. Mehechatesa. How do you know? You began, just like Bechar, you can't bring Bisman Azeh, so too you can't bring what? You can't bring Maisa. That was the Gemara's premise. The Gemara now is challenging that premise. How do you know Bechar you can't bring Bisman Azeh? Okay? So now, let's see some Rashis. Umay Ksavar. Let's see the Gemara, and then we'll see some Rashis. Umay Ksavar. You're telling me that it's Pashit, fellas. It's Pashit that Bechar not. Iksava Kedusha Rishayna Kitchel L'Shaita V'Kitchel L'Asalavai Afila Bechar Nami. What? You should have the Shaila. And Iksava Kedusha Rishayna Kitchel L'Shaita V'Kitchel L'Asalavai Afila Bechar Nami Tiboy. Let's see Rashi, guys. Umay Ksavar. Go up. Umay Ksavar Hay Tana De Pshitale Bechar Tfemi Maisa. What? We said for sure that Bechar Bisman Azeh you can't bring. Why is it Pashit? Iksava kedusha rishayna shel bias. The kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash kitchel l'shaita was kodesh at the time. The kitchel asalava and for the future. Ki heichi disvirle b'kedusha sa'aretz, just like Eretz Yisrael. Again, we don't make that distinction, right? We don't make, as we began to share, we don't make the distinction between the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael and the kedusha of Beis Hamikdash. The kami boile, what would the shaila be if it's kodesh? Mi kamina be'hashta b'loy chayma l'fnei Hashem l'kecha eloi. Because Pashit Maisim in Bechar. I feel Bechar Nami Yikra Aviyochal. Okay? The man de Islay Kitchel Asad Lavai Svirle Makrivin Afa Pisha and Bias Kedamina Minglis. So guys, watch. If you're going to tell me that Kitchel Shaitav Kitchel Asad Lavai, and when the Beis Hamikdash, even when the Beis Hamikdash is not there, it's considered Lefnei Hashem, then you should be able to bring a Bechar as well. You should, again, we're going to say it's speaking about what? Where it's Tisha B'Av, where you took care of the technicalities. So if it's Kadosh, even without the Beis Hamikdash being there, then you should be able to bring it. That's the first sad. What's the second sad? V'ikasava kedusha abayis batela Rashi, and what's the shaila then if it's batel? Umiboyle b'maiser hoyel veinet tzorch lebayis. Since it doesn't need the Beis Hamikdash, imis achel b'Yushalayim lifnei Hashem karinan bei, oiloi. Is it considered lifnei Hashem or not? So afila b'charnami ki agavnati boila. You should have the same shaila. You're going b'chor shenizrak damoi. You threw the blood. V'chor of abayis, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. V'dayim b'saro kayim, the bus is still around. Mahu sheyach luhu. Okay, so let's go through the Gemara again. Fill in the blanks. But first, let's do it outside. You began with your statement. Bechor bizman hazeh, you cannot go ahead and eat lifnei abayis. And just like bechor you can't, so too what? So too, Maisa you can't. Fred the Gemara the following. If you're telling me that kedusha rishayna kitchel l'shaita v'kitchel l'asalavai, and it's still kodesh in the even though the bias is not there, so why in the world can I not eat the bechar? So, and your whole premise is you can't. And if you're telling me that kedusha rishayna kitchel l'shaita v'loy kitcha, v'loy kitcha means and Yerushalayim is still considered l'fnei Hashem, and you know the bias, and that's your shaila by Maisa. You should have the same shaila by Bechor and not as a dove pashit that a Bechor you can't eat. So Mamanashach, Bechor, if it's kitcha l'shaita, kitcha, you should be able to eat it. And if it's not, the same shaila you have by Maisa, you should have by Bechor. The technicality was taken care of. It's Tisha B'Av. I did the Zrika. I have basa. Kenech esendos. Can I eat it? Can I eat it? Why do you neman as a dava pasha? You can't. If it's speaking kitchel l'shayt kitchel l'asa, of course you could. And if it's not, the whole shaila is again. If it's not, then the same shaila you have by Maisi, by Bechor is considered l'fnei Hashem or not. As I read the Gemara. How did the Gemara know clearly, guys, that Bechor b'zman hazeh you cannot eat? How did the Gemara know clearly Bechor b'zman hazeh you cannot eat? That's the Gemara shaila. Let's see it inside now. It says Gomai Ksava. What is the Gemara, the Brisa hold? Ikasava Kedushim Shana Kitchel Shaitim Kitchel Asalavai. Afil Bechor Nami, guys, you should be able to eat. Ikasava Kedushim Kitchel Shaitim like Kitchel Asalavai. That's the difference between Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. Afil Bechor Nami T-boy. You should have the same shaila by Bechor as you do by Maisa. Amar Avina. Therefore what? Right? Therefore, and therefore you cannot bisman hazeh bring a bechar. You can't do a zrika. You already did. In other words, guys, bechar bisman hazeh, of course you can't. Because you have to do a zrika. Why? Because kitcha shaitiv v'loy kitcha. Since like kitcha, I can't do a zrika. Since like kitcha, I can't do a zrika. So therefore, the Gemara knew unequivocally that what? The Gemara knew that what? That you can't go ahead and eat. What about a bechor that I took care of that problem? Says the Gemara. In other words, he's asking if guys, the Gemara is asking. So if it's not kitcha, so of course you can't bring a bechor. What were you thinking? And the Gemara says, here's what I was thinking. That is speaking about a bechor shenizrak damai kaidim chorban. It's Tisha B'Av. You did zrika. You burned the emurim and kaidim chorban abayis v'chor of abayis v'adayim bisrei kayim, and the bus is still around. Umakshinan bisrei ledamai. Right, and we make a hekesh between the basar and the dam. Ma damai b'mizbeach, just like the dam has to be on the mizbeach. Af bisroi b'mizbeach. So too the bus has to be on the mizbeach. So you want to know, guys, why we knew for sure that what Maisa Bechor, why you knew Bechor, guys, in the comparison to the Bechor, that Bechor can't be l'fnei abayis. It's kitchel l'shaita v'loy kitchel asalovay, and you know for sure. Why do you know for sure, fellas? Why don't you have the same shaila? And the answer is, I have a hekesh. What's my hekesh? I go ahead and makish bas l'dam. Just like dam, you need the mizbeach, so to bas you need the mizbeach. If there's no mizbeach, you can't do it. But Mela, I learned out there, Maisa from what? From Bechor. Just like Bechor, you can't. Maisa, you can't. So it comes out, fellas, there's two steps over here. Again, you can't learn from a Metzino, we learn from a Hekesh. What will we makish? We will makish, guys, look at me. We will makish Maisa to Bechor. Just like Bechor not, so to Maisa not. How do you know Bechor? Because I makish basa to dam. So there's two hekeshim. Again, Rabbi's a shaila, Maisa bisman hazeh, can I eat it? You're going to have a hekesh from Bechor that you can't. Fred the Gemara, how do you know Bechor you can't? I have a hekesh from basa to dam. Okay, good. That's the limud. Here's a problem. There's a technical problem over here. When it comes to kachim, dava halomi mehekesh, you can't go ahead and learn a hekesh from it. It's a gzeres lekasav in kachim. If you learn out something from a hekesh, you can't go and learn it to another hekesh. So, Bechor, Maisa Gufa, you learn from Bechor. But Bechor itself was a hekesh, you learn Basa from Dam. So, Fred the Gemara, how does it work? Something that you learned out of a hekesh can go ahead and teach behekesh. And for the Gemara, Maisa Dagan Chulin who? Maisa Dagan is Chulin. Maisa Dagan is Chulin, and therefore it's not considered Kachim. Since it's not Kachim, I can only learn it out. Says very good. You go after the thing that was learned out. In this case, Maisa. Very good. The Gemara has a shaila there. Maybe you go after the malame. The malame over here, what is basa v'dam? you're going after the basar, right? Mayek lemeimar says Gemara damu basar chadam milsahi. Damu basar is considered one thing. In other words, vis-a-vis a hekesh, we'll view. In other words, why was you makish basar to dam? That's not a hekesh. It's bechar to maisa to bechar. That's a hekesh. You're going to go from grain to meat. But meat to blood, it's one object, why it's not considered a hekesh, and memela, you don't have that problem. So again, we end the sugya of bikurim. We have machloikis where anacha is ma'akiv, not ma'akiv. The Rav Shimon said it's kriya is ma'akiv. Rabbi Akiva said kriya is ma'akiv. The Chacham said anacha is ma'akiv. The halacha is hanacha is ma'akiv. Bisman again, there's no bikurim bisman. Bikurim again. You have a few minutes today, guys. Just open a Rambam, read through the first few, like 2 or 3 prakim, and you'll get a geshmak for bikurim, one after the other. It's very geshmak. Okay, the Mishnah said kotche kedoshim u'maisa sheni chutz l'chayma. You get malchus. You eat kotche kedoshim or maisa sheni chutz l'chayma. You get malchus. So we just finished the sugya of bikurim, and now we're going to go to maisa sheni again. We bought a maisa sheni, the limud for bechar, just to bring out a riot to bikurim. But now is the sugya of maisa sheni. Kotche kedoshim is maisa sheni. Is what? Is you can't eat outside the chayma. You get malchus. Okay. Now, it says the Gemara, Tanina Chodazimna, you already learned it once. Maisa Sheni vehegdis, right? Shaloi niftu. Maisa Sheni vehegdis that you weren't poida, you get malchus for. Now, guys, what's the halacha Maisa Sheni? Where can you be poida? Inside Yerushalayim or outside Yerushalayim? You all know, I'm sure that's outside Yerushalayim. I don't even have to ask you. You know for sure, not a problem. So good. So when you say, I'm sorry. Rebbeim should not be sarcastic. I apologize to all of you. Okay. Anyway, Maisa Sheni fellas is only nifta outside Yerushalayim. So let's figure out these words. If I go ahead and eat Maisa Sheni that was not nifta, was not paida, I get malchus. Loy nifta means outside Yerushalayim because I could have been paida. Loy nifta means I wasn't paida, but I could be paida. So it must be speaking where? Outside Yerushalayim. So be'emes, you just said the same thing, 2 different words. You said Maisa Sheni Shaloi Nifta, Maisa Sheni that never was Nifta when you should have been, which is outside Yerushalayim, you get Malchus. Now I said in this Mishnah, Maisa Sheni that's eaten outside Yerushalayim, you get Malchus. Fred the Gemara, you're saying the exact same thing, just using different verta, you're just using different words. Says the Gemara, Tanina Chadazimna, Maisa Sheni Vehegdish Shaloi Niftu. Meaning you could have been paida, but you weren't. So it's speaking obviously what? Outside Yerushalayim. And for the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef Chanina, Seifa b'maisa sheni tahar, v'gavra tahar. The Seifa that says you're eating it outside the walls of Yerushalayim is speaking what? Is speaking a person that's tahar, and the maisa sheni that's tahar, and you're outside Yerushalayim, you're going to get malchus. That's our Mishnah. Right? Okay? The ka'achal chutz l'chayma. Reisha, the Reisha that said Maisa Sheni Shaloi Niftu, that you were in Paida, is speaking b'Maisa Sheni Tamei v'Gavra Tamei. It means the Maisa Sheni was Tamei or, not, guys, put the vav, put it or. Look, top taisus, guys. Reisha Maisa Sheni Tamei v'Gavra Tamei, oy ka'amar. The B'chodim inayu lucky. You don't need one, you don't need both to be Tamei to get Malchus. Either the Maisa Sheni was Tamei or you were Tamei, and the Maisa Sheni was Tahar. Either or. Okay. And you're eating it where? In Yerushalayim. Okay, so let's guys, let's put it in the words now. Maisa Sheni Shaloi Niftu, Maisa Sheni that you were in Paida, right? Where it's Tamei, where in Yerushalayim, Mashma in Yerushalayim, could you be Paida it? The halacha of not being Paida Maisa Sheni is but only bechutz is when it's tahar. Once it's tamei, you could be paidim in Yerushalayim. So it's 2 separate dinim. The din our Mishnah saying chutz l'chayim is speaking about everything is kasha b'yasha, malchus. The din of leiniftu is a chiddush, guys. You know what the chiddush is? It's in Yerushalayim. How could you be paid it? Because it's tamei. It's tamei. You can be paid it, and you're not. You get malchus. That's the chiddush. How do you know you be chayev on tumah? Now there's 2 tumas over here, guys. There's you being tamei or the Maisa Sheni being tamei. Says the Gemara, the Tanya of Shimon Omer, Leiba'ati mimenu b'tamei. It says in the beer in the vidui ma'aser that you say in the third and the sixth year when you get rid of all your ma'aser, I did not eat it b'tamei. So what do you see? Bein shani tamei v'hu tahor. Whether I'm tamei and the ma'aser sheni is tahor. Bein shani tahor v'hu tamei. V'heichem muzer al achila. But where are you warned not to eat ma'aser? Where am I warned about not eating it b'tumah? Any adeya? I don't know. Freddy, what do you don't know? Tumas aguf behedyiksiv. If you're tummy, it says openly, Nefesh eshet tiga b'chol dam tummy. Ada erev v'lechem and akotshim. El tumas atzma minayin. How do you know if you're tahar and the mice itself is tummy? How do you know that what? That's a no-go. So therefore, the Gemara, we answered the kasha. Why do you have to tell me two things? And the chiddush is that our Mishnah, the previous Mishnah, the Reisha, is speaking shlei niftu in Yerushalayim. After it was tamei or you were tamei, we know that your tamei. We have a source. We don't know the source that what elatumas atzmoi minayin dichsiv. It says leisucha lechol b'sharecha. You're not able to eat it in your gates. Ulhalun oimer by bechor balmum, guys. By bechor balmum it says b'sharecha teichlenu hatamei v'hator. B'sharecha teichlenu hatamei v'hator. So, guys, physically, let's do this, guys. Look at me. Get a lot of ideas. A bechor that's tamim, you got to bring to the Beis Hamikdash. He is a carbon. When it gets to balmum, the kohen can invite you to a barbecue. The kohen can be tor v'yasha. You can be tamei. Okay. If you're tamei, are you going to be matama the food? If you're tamei, are you going to be matama the food? Yes. Can the kohen eat it? Yes. That's by bechor balmum. It's not by what ma'aser sheni. That's how you know if the ma'aser sheni it's tamei that what you get malchus. It's a beautiful limud from bechor. The heter of eating a tamei dika kachim bechor is by bechor, not by ma'aser. So that's the limud. I'm just foreshadowing you the limud. Says the Gemara. Ella, how do you know it? It says by bechor balmum b'sharecha teichlenu hatami batar v'tanya derev Yishmael afilu tami v'tar oichlan. Even two people on one's tummy and Torah they can eat together. B'ka'ora achas in one plate. We're not worried about the Torah dika person eating tamei dika things. V'kamar achmana on that. Heich tamei d'shari lecha gabei tahar hasam. Where do we say that the Torah can eat with the tamei? That's by bechor balmum. But hacha loy seichel over there loy suchalecha b'sharecha. By ma'aser sheni you can't, and that's the azhara for what? For eating what? Beautiful derivative, but where the food is tamei itself. By ma'aser sheni you cannot eat it. So again, just to reiterate, we have a seemingly repetition. Our Mishnah is saying that you can't eat ma'aser sheni chutz l'chaima, you get malchus. Our first Mishnah is saying you eating ma'aser sheni that you were not poida, right? You get malchus. The assumption was you weren't poida it because you were chutz Yerushalayim because that's the only place where you could be poida. And the Teretz says no. We're speaking about in Yerushalayim proper, and you weren't poida it. And we know that you can't eat it betuma because only b'chor balmum you can eat betuma. You cannot eat ma'aser sheni betuma. Now the question is, how do you know, fellas, that you can be poida ma'aser sheni that's tamei in Yerushalayim? That's the chiddush, right? And that's what you're telling me, that you were. The chiddush is that you could have been poida and you weren't poida. Okay, so that the Gemara now comments. Uminale de bar pediyahu. How do you know that ma'aser sheni that's tamei is the bar pediyah? The Amar Rabbi Loza minayin l'ma'aser sheni she nitma she poidin leisoi afila b'Yerushalayim. How do you know ma'aser sheni that contracted tumah? You can be poida afila b'Yerushalayim. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, when there's a long way to go, because you can't schlep it. So se'esai can mean to schlep. Guys, it could also mean food. So leisuchal se'esai can mean you can't eat it. You can't eat it. Okay, so let's see. It says by Yosef, right? It says by Yosef, and they carried it away. Okay? So guys, listen to this. When do you have to be poida? When do you have to be poida? when can I be paida? One, I can be paida if it's chutz l'Yushalayim, because I can't schlep it. And two, I can be paida because I can't eat it. Why can't I eat it? Because it's tameh. Again, we're using the word se'esai as two different ways. We're learning to schlep. So, when you're a distance away and you're not able to schlep, you can be paida. In addition, when can I be paida? Because when I can't eat it, then you can be paida. That's how you know you can be paida ma'aser sheni when it's tameh. I'm gonna be Ravasi. Minayin l'ma'aser sheni tahar. Shepoidin I say afilu b'sia achas chutz l'chayma. Even if you're one step away from Yerushalayim, how do you can be paida? Shneimar kilei suchos esai. So because I can't carry it. As long as I can carry it, as long as I'm able to carry it, I can be paida. So even a step away. I need for Rabbi Eliezer's din that you can be paida b'tama when it's tameh. And kain lema krolei sucha la'oichlei. It just said you can't eat it. My seisai. Why did you use the lashon of seisai? Right? It must mean that what? Because you can't eat it. Because why? Because you can't schlep it. Maybe it only comes to teach me food. You can't schlep it. My say, shmami no tarti. You hear two things. It could have said litloi to schlep. It could have said ochel to eat. Why do you lashon say so? Because it's mashma both. It's mashma you can't schlep it, therefore you can be paid it. It's mashma you can't eat it because it's tamei, you can be paid it. Yosef Rav Chanina Rav Aishia v'kami boile apisku Yushalayim mahu. What happens if you're opening a Yushalayim? Can you be paid up? Pshita habechutz umasoy. Okay, now habechutz. If he's outside umasoy b'fnim kaltuhu. Guys, let's say he's carrying on his back, and he backs into Yerushalayim. He's still outside, but the backpack is inside. Once it's inside, even if he schleps it outside, he can't be paid up. Kaltuhu, the lashon of it was kolet, it was sheltered like Ari Miklat. It was inside the base. It was inside the Chemes Yerushalayim. You can't schlep it. Mechitza is hu bifnim. A kolto mechitza. Stop. Hu bifnim. He's inside. Umasoy bechutz mahu. What happens if he's in Yerushalayim but his backpack is outside? Tani lahu ahu sabad the baby Shmuel ben Yachai ki yirchem mecha hamakoim mimilacha. Mimilacha. That's mole in you. In other words, that would be considered part of you. So if you're inside and the backpack's on you, it's also considered inside. It's considered part of you. Now, that's because it's a backpack. Boy, Rav Papa, Nokele Bekanya, my. Guys, remember the hobo? The hobo in the cartoon? He's got a stick, and he's got he's schlepping the stick. In the back of the stick, he's got what? He's got his little pekala. So therefore, what happens in that case where the backpack's not on him? He's in Yerushalayim, there's a stick extending, and he's outside Yerushalayim. So why would it then be over there on the food? The mercy is teku. On that, what? There is teku. Okay, I think I'm going to stop over here. I have to get to Kailul.